All right, everybody, I'd like to walk you through really quick the math behind Ammon Bundy's upcoming victory for governor of Idaho. Now, as I go through this, I want to let you know that the mathematical analysis I'm about to do is the same math the campaign used to predict a 20-point loss by the next closest contender in the Republican primary against Brad Little here in May. And essentially what we did is we used statistics that went through the amount of Republican voters in the Republican primaries of 2014, 2016, 2018, and 2020. And then we use the average growth of those every single year. We can see Idaho growing. We use that average growth to predict what the 2022 voter turnout was going to be. Now, I know statistical analysis can get really boring and you get into the weeds, and there's just a lot of information in terms of the way statistical analysis works that bores people. So I'm not going to get into that. Rather, I'm just going to kind of oversimplify the explanation so that anybody and everybody can understand. In short, what we did is we took these statistics and then we estimate the voter blocks. And by voter blocks, I mean, who votes for conservatives, who votes for rhinos, who votes for people just because they have an R after the name, who votes for, where people land on the political spectrum. And we did statistical analysis on that based on history, averages, and using a simple algorithm, and we then determined where the 2022 primary would end up. Now, it's very important to note that when we did this, we disregarded all other factors like people's emotions or your feelings, hype for certain candidates or whatnot, or for certain issues, people's desire. I want this person to win. I don't want Brad Little to win. Or even the quality of the other candidates. We just disregarded all of that because you can't have emotions messing up your math. Math is math, and it shouldn't be, messed up by people's emotions. After all that was said and done, we determined that, unfortunately, Brad Little was going to win by at least a 20-point spread, meaning that he was going to be 20 points higher than the next closest contender, and that was basically a virtual landslide. Of course, Ammon had already felt led to run as an independent candidate, and so he wasn't going to be included in that number. And that is proving to be an unbelievable move by the Bundy for Governor campaign, because now it's given him a path to victory, mathematically speaking, and again, not desire, hype, or emotion. So the campaign, based on statistical analysis that I just shared with you, predicted a 20-point spread. Let's see what actually happened. In the primary, 148,000 people voted for Brad Little. The next closest was Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin, who had just a little over 90,000 votes. That was exactly a 20.6 point spread. And so, yes, the statistical analysis that we used predicted this. Now, when I came out and told people, Brad Little's going to win by 20 points, because we said this in advance, people thought I was crazy, thought that I was nuts. They said, no way. Their favorite candidate was going to win, was going to blow, Brad Little out of the water, and there was absolutely no way they were going to lose, and there's no way he had that much support, not after COVID, not after locking the state down, not after all this stuff. I said, look, man, all that stuff aside, the mathematical statistical analysis shows he's going to win by 20 points. When he did win by 20 points, people couldn't believe it, but it just goes to show the accuracy of statistics. And obviously, it's not perfectly accurate because these numbers are based on people. However, history is the greatest indicator of the future. And so that's what statistical analysis all is. It's based on history, and it shows you what happens going forward. Now, or it can show you what's going to happen going forward. Now, even though this 148,000 number, the 20-point spread seems like a lot, when you add up all the votes of all these other candidates who are all way more conservative than Brad Little could ever dream of being, everybody from Janice to Ed Humphreys to everybody else, Bradshaw, Jackson, Marie, Kennedy, Usabel, they're all conservative candidates with a conservative platform. So the people voting for them are conservative, freedom-minded people. All of their votes combined was 132,981 votes. That means 132,000 people did not vote for Brad Little. So that's only a 5.6 point spread when you consider who it is who voted for him and who didn't vote for him. So the combined total here, all of a sudden, it now becomes a pretty close race. Now, if you extrapolate this out to the entire Idaho population, you get some interesting numbers. First of all, Idaho allegedly has about 1.9 million people right now, according to the United States Census Bureau. What this means is that 148,000 people who were voting in the primary, they would have otherwise determined the fate of all of the 1.9 million people who live in Idaho. That's only 7.8% of Idaho's population. That means less than 10% of the population determines the fate of everybody. That's not right, but that is unfortunately the way things have been in Idaho for decades. And not until this year, with Ammon running as an independent, is that all going to change. And so now, using the same statistical analysis which accurately predicted the 20-point spread of the primary election, that same mathematical analysis has proven a path to victory for Ammon Bundy right now, and I want to share it with you. This is how Ammon wins the general election. Now, we have to use obviously different numbers because we're looking at general elections now instead of primary elections. And so let me just show you the last two general elections in Idaho. The last one, of course, is here in 2018 at the top. Below that is 2014 on the bottom for the governor's race. And you can look this up for yourself online. You can go to the Secretary of State's website and look up these numbers yourself. We can see that Brad Little won with nearly 60%, and the Democrat candidate, who was Paulette Jordan, had 38.2%. Over here, you can see in 2014, when it was still Butch Otter who was the governor, old fossil Butch, we see down here A.J. Blukoff was the Democrat, who again got 38%. So it's really close to 60-40. Okay, you see that? So you got the Democrats basically taking 40% of the vote. I'm rounding here a little bit, but it's okay. So they're getting about 40% of the vote. What that means then is the Democrats are going to vote for the Democrats. So the only real question is the Republicans now are going to be split up between Brad Little and Ammon Bundy. Sure, there's other candidates down the line, but these are going to be the three major candidates: the Democrat candidate, Ammon Bundy, and Brad Little. So that 60% is going to be split up amongst the Republican candidate, which is Brad Little, and Ammon Bundy. If you run again the math, and these numbers aren't completely perfectly precise, and there's still some unknowns in terms of how many people are going to vote who have not registered yet, considering how many people are still moving into Idaho who are going to register to vote between now and the election in November, and the people who haven't turned out to vote yet but are going to, again, between now and November. Once you run it all, it's going to take approximately 300,000 votes to win. So this is the number. 300,000 votes is really the number we're looking for. Whoever gets 300,000 votes is most likely going to be the next governor of Idaho. Okay, so that is really what we're looking for. So when we're asking for the mathematical path to victory, we're actually looking for the mathematical path to 300,000 votes. You can see here before, Brad Little had 361,000 votes. Butch Otter only had 235,000, but that was with way less population. So you guys should be able to understand now how the analysis gets us that number of 300,000. Now, what's the path to 300,000 votes? How does Ammon Bundy get there? Well, let's look at these numbers very quickly. First, remember, 132,981 people who voted in the Republican primary did not vote for Brad Little. We can assume that people are all going to vote for Ammon Bundy. And again, I'm making some broad assumptions, but you can tell me whether or not you think that is an accurate assumption or not. Then, if you take a look at the total number of registered Republicans is 588,461. If we back out those 132,000 who already did not vote, or who already did vote in the primary, so that we don't want to count those people twice, and then we assume an 80% voter turnout. Why do we assume 80%? Well, the last round of voting was 81.9%. And after COVID, after gas prices, after everything going on in America right now, and all of the tyranny we have coming down from Washington, D.C., we are expecting a record turnout at the elections this November. So if last time was 81.9, it could be as high as 90% this time. But we're going to be conservative and use the number of 80% for our mathematical analysis. Again, like I said, we take out those 132,000 who we've already accounted for, and then we assume Ammon only gets 30% of them. If Ammon only gets 30% of these people, that's 109,315 Republican votes. Okay? So what we're saying is we only think Ammon is going to get 109,000, which is 30% of the Republican registered voters. So many people who I've talked to think, no, there's no way Ammon's going to get way more than 30%. Okay, maybe so. Maybe some people, no, there's no way Ammon's going to get way less than that. The idea that of the existing registered Republicans, Ammon could get 30% of them is very feasible to me. You can determine it for yourself so you can see the math and you can crunch your own numbers. But we're going to assume 30%. Then you take a look at the additional parties, the Constitutional Party and the Libertarian Party, or the Constitution Party, and there's 15,000 of those folks registered. The majority of those people, I would say all of them, do not want Brad Little to be their governor. And more than likely, Ammon is going to get the vast majority of those. Let's just assume 80% of them. If he gets 80%, that's an extra 9,800 votes. But the big chunk here is the registered unaffiliated. These are the people who say, I am part of no party whatsoever. There's 280,000 of them in Idaho right now. That's a lot. If you run the statistical analysis on the unaffiliated people, the vast majority of them end up voting liberal. They end up voting for Democrats. Probably like 60% of them, maybe even as high as 2/3. So using those numbers, we would assume about 100,000 of those people are freedom-minded, meaning, yeah, the vast majority of them are not freedom-minded. But those that are, it's about 100,000 based on the math. And if we assume that Ammon's going to get the vast majority of those, which would be about 90%, again, we're trying to be using conservative numbers here, then that's an additional 72,000 votes that Ammon is going to get from those people. Well, you take all four of those categories combined, and ladies and gentlemen, Ammon's total is 329,760 votes. And that's it. He wins. Ammon Bundy will be the next governor of Idaho. And there's two additional factors you have to consider here. First of all is this. There are still a lot of people moving in from California who have not registered, and those who haven't registered yet because they haven't moved in yet, but those who have moved in, the vast majority of them, I know Idahoans don't like Californians moving in, but what I can tell you is the vast majority of them moving in are moving in because they're conservative, freedom-minded people who are escaping the socialist haven of California, and they're looking for freedom in Idaho, assuming that it's here. When they get here and they find out that the governor, Brad Little, is just as bad as the governor of California, they're upset. They need to know that message, but the point is, if the message gets to them, the vast majority of them are conservative and they're going to vote for Ammon Bundy. The other thing you have to take into consideration is that approximately 36,000 Democrats, that's a lot, registered to vote for Brad Little in the primary. And they are not going to be voting for Brad Little in the general election. They're going to be going back to their Democrat candidate and voting to support the Democrat Party. That means there are a ton, literally tens of thousands of votes that went for Brad Little in the primary that will not be going to Brad Little in the general election. So he's going to get a whole lot less on that front as well. So then this begs the question. And the question we have to ask now is, okay, if the mathematical path is possible, if Ammon can get to 300,000 votes, in fact, if he can get to 329,760 votes, how do we ensure that that happens? How do we ensure that he gets to 329,760? Well, my brothers and sisters, that is where you come in. These people will only hear and learn about Ammon Bundy's message, particularly these down here, the registered unaffiliated. Ammon's campaign, as it is right now, is going to gather the vast majority of the registered Republicans, the Constitution Party, Libertarian Party, and the people who already voted in the primary but did not vote for Brad Little. He's going to get most of those already based on the existing effort of the campaign. However, to reach all the unaffiliated and the new move-ins, it's going to take money. It's going to take a campaign effort to advertise, and advertise some more. It's going to take TV ads, social media ads, ads on YouTube and Facebook, on TikTok, ads on everywhere you look, advertisements on billboards, advertisements on TV, advertisements on radio, direct mail campaigns. If the Bundy for Governor campaign can get people to donate to make sure these people all hear the message, Ammon Bundy will be your next governor. So now I leave it in your hands.